Discover how smarter project insights can lead to better project outcomes.
Hello, project people. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Project Chatter podcast. It's always great to have you with us. Dale, I'm glad just to see you're not wearing purple today. How are you, man?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. What do you have against purple?
Nothing, just on you.
Are you a colorist? Is that a word?
Not yet.
Okay.
But it's good to see you, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good. Always good to see Mr. Machine Gun Martin there as well. How are you doing, Martin?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about colours being colourblind, so swiftly move on.
Yeah, I wasn't being inclusive then when I did that. Sorry, mate. But we do have some exciting guests today, and we have double guests today, so double the trouble. I'm looking forward to it. I'd like to welcome to the show Michelle Banner and Johnny Shepard. Ladies and gents, great to have you on the show. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks as well.
Very good, very good. Now, this is the Master and the Apprentice, and I'm really interested in your story because we don't get to talk about this enough, really. I'm going to start with you, Michelle. I'd love to know how you started in project controls and training, and where your origin story was, and then we're going to head over to Johnny as well.
Yep, my story goes back more years than I care to mention, really. But sadly, my entry into project controls is more of a stumbling. I graduated as a civil engineering student. I worked in construction. I was a site engineer for some time, but always knew that I wanted to get into something like planning or something like that. But I was quite categorically told, no, you're too young, you don't have enough experience, and you don't know anything, which I thought, fair enough. And when I looked around me, all these, dare I say it, pale, stale, male kind of people in their late 50s, 60s were doing those jobs. I thought there is no view for it. Keep moving on. And it was just purely by chance working in the rail industry where I got given the opportunity to kind of move into cost and planning and scheduling and that kind of stuff, which is great. I've never looked back since. The last sort of 4, 5, 6 years been involved with bringing on young people into the organisations, and project controls has been fab too. That was a real eye-opener to encourage them not to have the experience that perhaps I did, that you don't necessarily need 40 years cards of experience before you can even be considered worthy of working in project controls.
That's incredible. Yeah, I love that bit you just said, pale, male and stale.
Yeah.
Dale, write that down. Pale, stale and male, Dale. All right, that is a great intro to Johnny. Johnny, as the apprentice, how old were you when you blew up the Death Star?
So I was 16 when I blew up the Death Star.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm just checking your. Yeah.
Quite intrigued though. So we got Machine Gun Martin. When am I going to get a nickname?
Oh, by the end of the pod, I think.
Right.
Yeah, we'll
that's
find
your
out.
That's your challenge.
Yeah, we'll come up with something by the end of the pod, and we'll see how we go. So Johnny, obviously, Michelle. How did it all happen for you? How did you start in this industry, this craft?
Yeah, so I joined the Project Controls Apprenticeship when I was 16. I was literally one of those kids who didn't know what I was going to do. All I wanted to do was play on my Xbox. Just that was it kind of thing. And then I used to go rock climbing with a friend who was an electrical engineer, and then he talked to me about all the UK apprenticeship schemes that have been pushed, and he got me interested in that. So in the first instance, I actually applied for an engineering apprenticeship, and obviously you'd have to ask the guys who were interviewing me, but I assume I made the mistake of talking about forecasting from a business studies course at high school. And that's when it kind of dealt towards, well, maybe you're a bit more suited to project controls. So didn't have a clue what it was. I just kind of went with it a little bit. And since then, it's just kind of really developed into my passion since then. So I completed the apprenticeship scheme in 2018. I have had experience of going up to Sellafield site in Cumbria. So I've had site experience working in decommissioning, working in areas supporting EDF with their safety cases. And then as of last year, I moved out the nuclear industry to supporting the water industry in a planning role on looking at flood defence assets on the Thames River. So I've had a bit of a wide experience since then, even though it's been in such a short burst of experience in that. So So yeah, it's been good so far. Anyway.
Yeah, that's great. That's great to hear as well. I think obviously the apprenticeship courses and the incentives in the UK are far more mature. I mean, I can speak for Australia. We don't have that for project controls. It's we're far behind in that space, and this is a great story that you're telling today. So really appreciate your perspective. Johnny, what is it then? What is it that specifically you like about project controls?
It's the ability to ask questions without looking stupid for me. No, I like asking lots of questions is the main thing. But I did have a bit of a consideration whether project management was something I wanted to delve into, but I like the information side of it. So I like being there to kind of delve into the weeds of things and understanding, why is the project potentially slipping, or are we doing great? How well are we on spend and that? But I like to then go, okay, mate, right, that's what you need to do to make that decision then. And I think I've learned, particularly in the last few years, that it's more of it's very people orientated project controls. People can make the mistake of thinking it's just you're putting information into a plan, or you're creating a tracker for costs or anything like that. But if you're not able to establish relationships with the people you're working with, they're not going to trust you to give you the answers, and the data that you're going to actually provide is probably going to be a bit naff really. So so to be honest, I would say I'm quite lucky in the sense that I developed a passion by accident. If that makes sense.
No, it's fantastic to hear. I think you're right. I think there's an element of dealing with or consuming a large amount of information to interpret and understand, and then somehow you have to articulate that back, and then you have to deal with people problems. And that's one of the things I think is a common theme throughout our entire podcast episodes, Dale and Martin, is we've always had this, it's always come back to behaviors and values and people and communication and leadership. And but it's always missed. And so I might just quickly jump over to Michelle and add with the training flow as well. Do you see, is that one of the reasons why you are in the project control space as well, is because it is about the people, it is an interesting role, it changes?
Absolutely. It's about the variety. I am an inquisitive person by nature as well. I like to understand why things are where they are, as well as kind of suiting my natural, logical kind of process into things. I love the variety. I love what you can do. And I just, to me, it's not just the technical, although I have a technical and engineering background, which helps enormously. I echo Johnny's sentiments. I'm sure throughout his apprenticeship, you were sick and tired of me telling them all of this, but it is about those skills. How do you challenge somebody confidently but politely when you think that their forecasts are absolute rubbish or they're not substantiated? Building those relationships is so important and so underestimated, I think, sometimes in that sort of those early careers elements of it. You've got to get to that point where you're training some of those elements too, and you're bringing that out in those individuals.
You'll definitely find that, particularly with apprentices, and that they'll pick up the tools like that, but that people element, it takes a lot longer. Even when I finished my apprenticeship, I wasn't there. Even now, I'd say I'm not there. Like it just keeps building up year on year on year. So it's massive, really important.
Yeah, I just realized that you're starting project controls at 16. By the time you give 10 years, you're going to be 26, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So you're going to be a 26-year-old. And I imagine this is going to be interesting in the industry, right? When you get early career age people who are super across the, very, very skilled. As you mentioned, 10 years, Johnny, we hope you're better with people. You're going to have this, you're going to have this skill set. No, honestly, you're going to have this package of skills at 26, and that's going to be incredible for the market, because obviously, the guys you're speaking to on the podcast today, we obviously started a bit later in our careers. Maybe Martin might beat you, but we really didn't start until I think I was 24. I don't know how old you were, Dale and Martin, but it's really, really interesting. And I guess the whole idea of this, Johnny and Michelle, is to try and enable more of that access. So could anyone, and I'll open this up to you, Michelle or Johnny, around explaining the apprenticeship model? How does that work for the viewers that aren't in the UK? Can you give me a bit of a high level summary of that?
Yeah, so I can talk about from an employee, and also I'm involved in the trailblazer groups that develop some of the apprenticeship level standards, as well as now I'm also delighted to be involved in doing endpoint assessments for apprenticeships. So it's lovely to see all these people coming to the fruition of their apprenticeship. But essentially, the apprenticeship is broad. It covers every aspect of project controls, estimating, cost, planning, risk, commercial, all those other kind of things, bandaged up into one quite intense apprenticeship. Really, it's not an easy feat to do, and I think, I was saying 16-year-olds potentially coming in to do that. It's a tough ask, but it gives them a really thorough background into doing it. So it will vary from employer to employer how they manage it, but in the experience I've had, we've always put our apprentices through some sort of operations maintenance kind of engineering side, just to get that understanding of how things work, as well as doing their diploma in project controls as well. And that involves a year at college, day release. Others do it in blocks. They may take, so I know some larger energy companies will send their apprentices off to college in blocks, block release, go off, do all your theory, come back, put it into practice on the sites and things like that. So it's a fantastic opportunity. It really is, to get people in at the young age and preserve our profession at the end of the day, and grow our own, rather than continually getting people in, changing around, and actually just grow and mold these people into what you would like them to be.
So supposed to add to that though as well is that, when you assume apprentice, you assume 16-year-old kid who's wet behind the ears and that, but I'd say the term apprentice has changed, particularly in the last 10 years, and it's actually for anyone of any age who wants to develop effectively. Even from my part, so I completed the level 3 standard, and I've just embarked on the level 6 now, which has just been released back last August. So it's for me, obviously I've already been working in project controls for a few years now. Now I'm taking my existing skill set and then developing it. So even not just for younger people who potentially are getting into the industry, but it's also other people from different disciplines who potentially want to change in their career as well. And it's a massive drive for the government to really push in that, because there's a huge skill gap, isn't there?
I think that the stigma of an apprentice, I hate to harp on to back in the day when I was your age, type of conversations, but back in the day when I was your age, an apprenticeship or a youth training scheme, as it was known then, was really seen as something quite derogatory, or for somebody that had no future. And it's just so delightful to see that image has changed, and that you see people choosing apprenticeships as a valid career choice, rather than being forced because they're not academic enough or they're not this. That earn while you learn model is great when you consider the traditional route to universities and the quite prohibitive fees for some. To do an apprenticeship allows you to earn a decent wage whilst you're learning and developing, and not come out with a ton of debt at the end of it. But again, what you were saying before, Val, Johnny coming out with 10 years experience at the age of 26 is pretty phenomenal, really.
Yeah.
I just started at 26 into my planning career. I think it sets a great precedence for the future, and the future leaders of project controls as well, and in organisations across the globe. It's fantastic. I just wish, like you said, that there were other countries that would adopt that kind of frameworks. I know that the States don't have anything like that, or apprenticeships are more for your blue collar, your blue collar workers rather than your professional skills. So I think the UK are doing something right with these things. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and I think thanks to the UK government, we'd love to hear it, and how we could do something similar, with subsidies, and help push and get people into apprenticeships. We had something similar in Australia with like TAFE colleges, where it was always considered like not derogatory, but it was kind of beneath people to be a tradie or do some type of extracurricular. But actually, I think a lot of people don't really do well in the school system, and they want to get out and do things, and they want to prove themselves in the world, and they're independent enough to do that. There should be opportunities for that in the market.
And I think that's interesting that you say that, Val, because again, I'm sure Johnny will attest to this with the way in which people are think through the UK education system. It's all about, and we see it at the endpoint assessments as well, where we talk about, what's your free, how do you invest in your own learning? And the focus is, it's about qualifications. They've been drummed in, qualifications. We test children at the age of 7 all the way through. It's all about this. And therefore, that when they move into the professional world, they're still very focused on qualifications, and they forget that there's a whole wealth of knowledge and information that will support their careers far more than perhaps going off and doing a training course and getting a certificate for it. It has to be supplemented with both. Obviously, I'm a passionate trainer in what I do on a day job, and we have our academic certificate program and all that kind of too. But we still focus on, you have to do an element of your own learning and your own development is part and parcel of it. So taking that shift into apprenticeships is quite difficult. I don't know how you found it, Johnny, when you kind of moved into that environment.
To be honest with you, even though the fact I did my apprenticeship, I still had that qualifications idea stuck in my mind, because you'll probably recall a conversation when I finished. First thing I said to you is, right, uni time. And you said, just relax, go work for a bit and then see what you want to do. And for me, that was probably the best thing, because I had the headspace then of just being able to focus on my work and, like I said, developing those soft skills and that. It is changing, I think, that approach and that, but I think it's always going to be very stuck, particularly with traditional views in the country, in that it's going to be school, uni, and then slowly but surely the apprenticeship will kind of creep in. But
are there any entry requirements for the apprenticeship? So academic, you need a certain
GCSEs? So it's generally it's your maths and your English as minimum, and then obviously I think depending on what type of course you're doing, there might be introduced some sciences in there. You have to pass your maths and English, otherwise if you embark on the level 3, you have to take an English and maths course while you're doing it and that. So, because it is really important in that, like just being able to, basic report writing and all that kind of stuff is kind of central to what we do. So,
I think each employer will have their own kind of parameters, but again, from an employer's perspective and someone who's had the responsibility of bringing on these apprentices, it's not necessarily their academic qualifications I look for. Obviously, maths and English at a level is a must. You can't get away from that. But when we're looking at CVs and we're doing assessment centres and things for apprentices, we are looking at their communication style. We're looking at, how invested are they in their own learning and development? How are they willing to fail sometimes? So one of the nasty things that we've done in the assessment centres is make our potential apprentices do a Sudoku puzzle. I'm not sure how many school leavers would be quite happy to sit there and do a Sudoku, but what I'm watching for is how do they manage in adversity? How do they tackle that kind of, oh my goodness, how am I going to deal with this situation when they're faced with a problem that they may not have done? Like I said, I can't imagine many people kind of willingly doing those, or the old logic puzzles that you get. And that's not to test their ability at doing those kind of things. It's also to test to see how they react when they're faced with adversity, but in a controlled environment. And it's really, really telling, who will make it and who won't, because we know in project controls, not only are you learning something new all the time, it's quite a broad curriculum that you learn. But again, it's about dealing with, how do you deal with those awkward people that don't want to tell you anything or doing stuff? It's about all that resilience that you need to build up. So it's massive.
You just wanted to watch a load of kids play Sudoku, didn't you?
Yes.
Sounds a bit creepy, but anyway, we won't go down that rabbit hole. I'm really interested because we've mentioned it a few times. I think Simon Sinek said it, you hire for attitude and you train for skill. But Johnny, you've said it a couple of times already around, relationships, communication, soft skill, that's one of the particular challenges for youngsters coming in, building that confidence, using that soft skill, because it's almost easy in a way to pick up a more technical skill because nothing's shouting back at you when you get it wrong, right? But when you're dealing with people, communication, relationships, etc., there's someone on the other side and you don't know how that person will react to the way you are acting, right?
Yeah.
So a bit of a lead up, but my question is, do we do enough to equip young people with that foundation? Should we be doing more than just a technical skill? Because the technical skill is fantastic, right? You need to know what a schedule does. You need to know how it links up into your costs and your resources and your rates and how it comes out as a report. Of course, we need to do all of that. But as you say, you can have all of that technical skill, but if you don't have the soft skill, it means nothing. Can we be doing more?
I don't think it's a teachable skill. I think the answer is let people fail, and then they will learn, and then you go to the next step, and then you fail again, then you get a little bit better, and then you fail again, you get a little better. I don't think it's not on the same type of teaching methodology as something that's technical. You've just got to, just let people get on with it, and they'll either sink or swim at the end of the day. I think it's more about your personality than anything, whether you can cope with that.
Is that then something that comes back to who we are as people, that it actually attracts a certain type of character, this role, rather than something that we can say anyone can come and join?
I wouldn't say so, because it depends how you approach your role. So like I'm quite comfortable coming in all guns blazing.
Yeah.
Someone who's maybe a little bit more introverted just needs to adapt their approach and that, so they might kind of route through their project manager a bit more and have a bit more, personal relationships. The key is learning how to read the situation and understand the dynamic of the team and what approach should I take. So I'm quite comfortable just having a laugh and a joke with the people I work with, and once you build, so I'm comfortable once those relationships are built, I can kind of pull them on side, going, a bit worried about this, mate. What do you think? And they'll tell you straight, no, it's nothing to worry about. We'll be fine. Or, no, actually, Johnny, you're right. We should probably look into that. Someone else might take a different approach, and like I said, they need, perhaps people to come to them to solve a problem, and that I think it's a case by case basis.
I think there are elements you can sort of guide and teach some elements of those behavioural skills. So how to communicate effectively is a little bit more teachable than some of the other things, and some of those other behavioural, bit of resilience, all that kind of stuff. You can do a lot of teaching on the theory of it, like you said, but putting it into practice. And I think that's why organisations that have apprentices need to put in place a structure that allows those apprentices to have, again, it's a cliche term, a safe space to talk, somebody that's not their direct kind of management on their projects and stuff, to be able to say, how do I handle this situation? How do I deal with this kind of sticky situation? I know they're not, I think we can do something better, but I'm getting a bit of pushback. How do you do that? So having an organisational structure, a functional structure where you've got that person that understands project controls, but also understands and can empathise with what it's like to be someone new to the role, to have that conversation, to have that safe space to say, what do I do in this situation? Because that's how you learn, isn't it? That's how you do that. Having that ability to fail and not be berated for it, but also that person to go to say, how do I do something differently next time? Yeah,
because you do risk a lot of imposter syndrome, particularly if you've not come from a technical background and that. So from a pastoral perspective, I suppose that's where you could help people out. Because like I said, I've come to you tons of times just to go, how do you do this, or I don't feel confident in what I'm doing here, and like I said, you built me back up, and then I'm back and going. That I suppose, and from that point of view, that's key.
Organisations have to be really invested in that apprenticeship programme to be able to make it work to its full advantage, and to allow people to come out at the other end. Those people, those apprenticeship skills cover the knowledge, skills and behaviours that would be expected of a project controller. It's not just about the education or the experience, it's a whole package altogether, and having that person to kind of go to as well. So there's got to be investment in that setup as well.
So Johnny, you mentioned quite a few times how you were able to go to Michelle. And, one of the reasons Val and I started this podcast is because we compared our careers and we thought we had good people around us, that helped us in our careers. And we wanted to pay that forward by making this, freely available to anyone to listen to. And so my question is then around mentorship. And is there a barrier to mentorship? Do we have enough people putting their hands up and saying, I want to be mentored? And two, enough people then equally saying, well, I'd like to mentor people, because I feel like that is almost like a hidden gem, that it's a free learning resource. It's an extremely valuable learning resource. Yet I don't know if we have enough of those relationships going on. What's your view on that from someone that's sort of fairly new to the industry compared to us that have been around for a while? Do you see enough of that, or do you think we need more?
I don't think there's enough of the official mentor as you describe, and that I feel like in my situation, who I've considered my mentors in the past has been very unofficial. So what that causes is other people who maybe is a bit more introverted and quite comfortable just cracking on their own, they'll never put their hand up in that situation. And that, so to me, providing that support to the people just to say, look, it's there if you need it, is important. But it's a big question to ask, like how do you solve that problem? You know, in an organization it's a bit easy in that because there's budgets and all that kind of stuff, but you know, what about externally? You know, what can we do more to help in that situation? And that, I think the ACOSD community practice for planning and scheduling is a good example of that. We've been asking that question, is how can we support people in the industry when, you know, you've got the constraints of time and budget and all that kind of stuff, really.
Well, you've got the platform now. You're on the Project Chatter podcast. What do you say to your peers? What do you say? What do you encourage them to do?
Look through LinkedIn is a good one. Try and get some networking from that. Be comfortable to ask people questions. I think that's where it starts off from. Then I've probably said about a million times this call, it's all about your relationships. So if that person knows you well enough, they'll be more than willing to help you in that situation. So it's don't just sit on your own and think no one's going to help me. It's, you know, try and build that support structure as best you can. And then, like I said, for seniors who are potentially asking, how do I support people more? It's just, you know, ask them. If you've got an apprentice there, you might not be saying anything, but they might be waiting for you to ask them. So just put them to one side, as you know, how are you getting on? Do you need some support with this? A big one as well, you'd be quite surprised, is do you need some help completing your course in terms of providing the evidence, you know, where to go and stuff like that. So it's a bit of a two-way street, really, is that people who need mentorship need to speak up more, and people who are in the positions to provide mentorship need to look out for people to support more.
Brilliant. I love it. And Michelle, you know, we've often said on this podcast as well, is if you don't ask, you know, nothing's going to happen. If you do ask and the response is negative, well, you're not worse off. You're just in the same place you were before. Yeah. But if you do ask and something positive happens, wow, it could open many, many doors. What do you, I guess, say, Michelle, to those that are in the position to mentor, to encourage them to do more? Because, you know, a lot of people you speak to that sort of perhaps have a few more years under the belt say, oh, I'm just too busy. I've just got so much on. We work in high pressured environments, lots of, you know, demands on project professionals these days. We don't have enough people. How do I create the time to then go and spend and mentor someone else? What do you say to that?
I think for me, I get a lot of reward out of it. So Johnny works for a completely different company to me now, but yet we'll still phone up every now and again asking for professional advice. You know, he's joined the COP that I chair. It's fantastic. I get a lot out of it personally. It gives me a sense of pride and achievement to be in that position. But I would refute the time side of it. I don't think it necessarily has to be a big timely involvement. You don't have to come and join, you know, or set up a big kind of mentoring scheme to be able to offer 15 minutes of a conversation with somebody over it. I think there's a lot more that can be done. I think people put barriers in the way because it can seem like quite a daunting thing to do. I think, you know, if you do have those, what do I know? You know, I've got all this experience, but how relevant is it to what these are doing? Just do it. Just enjoy speaking to these kind of early careers individuals. See what is, because you can learn from them as well. So I'm not quite a dinosaur yet, but I sometimes feel with the advances of technology that I'm getting there. You know, my education is very, very different to the education of, you know, early careers individuals now. And you can learn a thing or two, absolutely. It's a two-way street you get out of it, you know, the ability, and Johnny mentioned it before, the ability for people to pick up new software, new skills, new technology is phenomenal. It takes me a little bit longer, but yeah, I've got the experience, I've got the battle wounds, I've got the battle scars of how to deal with those awkward people. So it's a very much a two-way street, but do it. And I encourage people to use their professional bodies, use things to kind of reach out and say, you know what, I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to support. I'm happy to kind of get involved and help anybody along with their careers, because it doesn't actually take up that much time. It's not as if you're writing their exams for them, is it? Let's face it.
You don't necessarily need to have 20 years experience to mentor. You know, believe it or not, I'm actually supporting a few people in my own company in a mentor scheme, because obviously I picked up the harder skills quite quickly up. So I'm providing mentorship to people in the company who are in project management roles or in risk management roles to develop the Primavera P6 skill set. So if I can do it at such an early stage of career, you know, anyone can. You know, it's just finding, make sure what can you give to people that's going to help them succeed.
It also sounds a bit harsh to say, but I think if any one of us who are a little bit older or a little bit further along in their careers took a step back, I think every one of us would say, do you know what? I wish I had more of that when I was in that position. So just take that step back and think, what can you do to give? It's dead cliche, isn't it? Give a little back. It doesn't take much. It really doesn't.
Absolutely. Pay it forward, as we always say on this podcast. Yes. But by way of handing it over to Machine Gun Martin, I'm going to ask you a question as well, Martin, because you had the displeasure of working with Val and myself, right? And dare I say it, learning a thing or two from us. What, from your experience, right, with the people around you, what would you like to add to this conversation before you have a go at Michelle and Johnny with your machine gun there?
And really go into how blessed you were to work with such fantastic experience.
I know I'm contractually obliged to say I had good people around me, but I honestly did, and it wasn't, you know, just Dan and Val. It was there's a few other people. I think we'd name checked them on previous episodes as well. That was really beneficial for me because I found in the early stages of my career, I am quite introverted, as you could probably imagine. So just sitting in and listening to some of those conversations where some people in the team might be debating how to get around a technical problem, and you sit in on these conversations and you don't say anything, and then over time you feel you can actually start to contribute, and then after a certain amount of time you've got that confidence and then experience that you can have your own opinion and it's valid. So yeah, you just kind of learning through time and just asking those people directly, because I've always found that people are really willing to share their experiences with you and share their war stories and experiences, and they really enjoy doing it. So yeah, just be inquisitive and ask people. I found it something that worked for me, and it sounds like Johnny, you've had that experience as well. Probably. So we spoke about soft skills earlier, and probably one for Michelle. How do we go about teaching some of the softer skills, such as prioritization on projects? We had Nigel Creaser on the show a couple of weeks ago, and I remember him saying that other people will do it for you if you don't take charge of it, and it's something that when in the early stages of your career, it's quite difficult because you're not taught it at school. It's something that comes through time. So is that something you teach, or how would you have gone about coaching someone?
Yeah, I think it's more coaching and mentoring, that kind of time management, prioritization kind of thing, because we all have different methods, don't we, of doing things. So in my experience, you know, quite often you'll get, as a manager, I've had criticisms of apprentices saying, well, they're not doing what I'm asking them to do, or they're not doing things quickly enough, or this, that, and the other. And when you kind of really boil down to the issue, it is about time management. And quite often their personality too. So I had a case with an individual, wasn't Johnny, by the way, another apprentice who was really, really struggling with, working for one or two project managers, each with different and competing priorities. And they were starting to get quite critical that he wasn't meeting the requirements of the job, and therefore he was starting to get a little bit of a bad reputation, really. But once I kind of delved into it a little bit more, it was the fact that he wasn't able to time manage because no one had taught him, no one had shown him the methods that were available to him, and they're different for everybody. I'm very much a list person. I like to write things down. Others are more post-it notes or kind of to-do lists on diaries and stuff like that. But to even have that conversation about how are you going to manage your time, what's working for you, what's not working for you, what are your blockers, was like a revelation to him. And then to also, I found with a lot of apprentices or a lot of people that are new to their careers, forgetting that apprentices can be, more mature people these days as well, but concentrating on the kind of the early careers, they want to please people so much that they don't want to say no. And the biggest teaching I can say is it's okay to say, I can't do that right now, but I can do it tomorrow or on Friday. And that natural prioritization may come out, or asking that question, when do you need it by, rather than just kind of jumping and saying yes. It's about that ability. You're not being rude or disrespectful to your seniors, and they have quite a sense of hierarchy sometimes, to say no, to say that's not what I want to be. I can't do that right now. And I think that's probably the biggest learning curve they can do. That's probably the biggest teaching I can give them, that ability, that confidence to say no and push back a little bit. I can't do that now, but I'll do it then or the other. And that helps kind of protect their reputation as well as being in control and managing their own workload, and gives them skills for the future, because it only gets worse, doesn't it? Unfortunately.
Yeah, it's something I still deal with now, to be honest with you. Like a lot better than I used to be in that, but it's just a time thing, isn't it? No.
Do you think it's something that could be taught in schools or colleges?
Or
is it something you just pick up?
I'm surprised it's not, because if you think about it, it's no, and the analogy that I tend to give a lot of people, it's no different if you've got 12 lots of homework to be done in the next week. Yeah. How would you sift through all of that? How would you sift through what's more important, whether it's important to you? What are your drivers and things about, your motivation? Because we all know what we do, don't we? We pick the stuff that we enjoy doing them first and leave all the rubbish stuff till the end, irrespective of when it's due, because that's what motivates us. That's what kind of, influences us to do things. We tend to pick the most enjoyable stuff first. But I'm astounded it doesn't get more focus in schools, or if it does, it goes over the heads of people, because you see that time and time again, that ability to time manage. But having said that, I do think the biggest part of it is that ability to communicate and get over that fear of letting people down. If I say, I haven't got time to do that today, that's probably the biggest hurdle, to be fair.
They respect you more for it as well.
Yeah.
Yep. 100%. One of the other things, so for probably I'll start with you, Michelle, and hear your thoughts after Johnny. For people starting out in the profession as an early careers person, would you recommend people focusing on data integrity, getting a good grounding in project controls, or would you try and put more emphasis on presenting information to management? Both equally valid and useful skills. You need both to succeed, but it will come with experience. How would you?
Parallel. You have to, and like I said, I'm privileged now to be in a position where my primary role is training individuals through, a certificate program that we have, and we tackle it through looking at both the technical competencies as well as the behavioural and the contextual as well, because often we find people, well, why am I doing that? And they can't put in that ability to be able to say, well, what is it about that means that's important? What is it? So you're kind of teaching them hand in hand. So for example, when I'm teaching, or we're teaching about kind of planning and scheduling, because that's my thing. The other stuff can just do one. I'm very much about planning and scheduling. I joke, I jest. I'm teaching them all the way through when we talk about, how do you set up a schedule from scratch? I don't even touch the kind of technically side. We go through the process, and every time I'm talking about it, I'm thinking about those behavioural blockers that I've come across. How do you extract to somebody? What questions do you need to ask? How do you do that? And then get to the point of that process of what's important. How do you verify that data as you're going through? So it's a very much hand in glove process, Martin. I don't think the two are separate. I think they have to be taught together in that context of what you're trying to do, rather than separate. Well, we're going to do a module on how to communicate today. It's all part and parcel of it, and how you present that data to individuals as well. And it's practice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think in today's role as well, I don't think you're ever going to have that binary one day. Like in one role, you're going to be just presenting, and then another day you're just going to be managing data. Generally, you're doing both at the same time, as you said, Michelle. Like, to be truthful, when you were asking that question, I was trying to think, what did I learn first? I can't remember. I don't think that I could tell you. Yeah.
Definitely. And I think it's about that storytelling is really, really important to me professionally, to be able to take somebody through that journey, to take somebody through the data that you're providing, and tell that story, knowing that you've got the best data possible, or if it hasn't, the reasons why you haven't got the best data, because we don't live in a perfect world, do we? There are always flaws. Time is always sometimes against us with these things, and you can't always do the perfect job that you want to do, and that's a big skill to get over as well. That's a big kind of hurdle to get over, that I want to get it right. Sometimes you just can't. You have to kind of get that balance of, when do I stop doing something? But just those kind of practicing things all the way through, presenting stuff, using people to say, can I just run something by you first? Can I have a little look? Using those people around you to develop those skills as you go forward.
And I imagine that's been harder during the pandemic, where you can't have those informal chats and just
massively.
show
We
people
found, like I said, doing the endpoint assessments for apprenticeships and doing their structured interview, which is their kind of final hurdle, that we asked them what their challenges are, and every single one of them so far has put dealing with the pandemic. Because I think it's been not only hard from a kind of a logistical element of it, you're working from home, but for people that are new to an industry, new to a role, you miss out so much on those conversations, or that listening in the office, that earwigging that we all do, and hearing other people, that conversation in the kitchen, that bumping into somebody, has been phenomenally difficult, I think, for a lot of them, because they're not picking up on that information that you hear on a day-to-day basis. So I think I admire anybody that's managed to get through completion of an apprenticeship over the last couple of years, because it would have been incredibly difficult for them to do that and get the knowledge that they need. Hats off to them.
Fair play. Val, anything you want to add to this, or you got any new questions?
Yeah, I've got a few things. One of them was, usually in the tradies and the blue collars, there's a few pranks that are pulled on the apprentices, the glass hammer, left-handed screwdriver. Do they have any jokes or pranks that they pull in the project controls apprenticeship? I just wanted to know if it was a bit of banter.
Get away with it. I think, again, it's more if how well you know that person and that. I think a good one is because I'm working down in a job in London. Most Jonathans or Johns down south, if you're from Eton, are called Jonty. So we have a joke that from south of Birmingham and Jonty, and then up north I'm Johnny.
Right. Well, it's good to hear from both of you on this really important topic, and I'm glad we got an insight, because again, we don't know, we're old. But just to defend you as well, just a comment back before we used to Michelle around being a dinosaur, you didn't have the internet, we started without, we didn't know anything, and it was good to know nothing. It was like, I don't know. So I think in access today, and self-education is huge, and it's very accessible, much more than it was in our time. So the apprentices have got it easy. Look, I want to have a question around what I call the day in the life of an apprentice, because I think that's really good too, because if anyone's listening to this going, geez, I want to be a Johnny or a Johnsy, how do they do that?
You can never be another Johnsy or Johnny.
That might be your nickname now. You've squared yourself in a hole. So in the day in the life of the apprentice, maybe the times you do remember, Johnny, because otherwise it'll get pretty dry. What did you do? Like, how was it structured? What do you remember in terms of courses or delivery or the work?
Depending which role you were doing. So I primarily trained as a planner. So my biggest kind of memories as an apprentice in that, even though it wasn't too long ago, was up at site and that. So we were kind of in the drilling of the one for, as we were doing weekly updates at that time on that, because we were trying to push to quite critical end date and that. So I had a mentor I was working who was pretty much, you know, telling me, you need to speak to him, go speak to him, go speak to her and that. And like, so you'd be generally talking to a lot of people. They'd be pushing you to try and go on site as much as you can, try and get them to guide you around and do your updates from there, and then subsequently do your, you know, update P6 after the fact, and then discuss with people where you're up to in that. You know, even from the early days and that, you're never going to just be chucked in to say, look, you're on your own, mate, crack on. So from my point of view, my day-to-day generally starts with just doing a bit of data entry into P6 and all that kind of stuff, to the point that you're getting your own scope and that. So like it's a hard question to ask, because, you know, it's a very cliche thing, and I think everyone says it's that every day is different. You know, one day you could be doing updates, another day you could be reporting, you know, another day you could be looking at some, you know, innovating on different ideas, you know. Yeah, it's hard answer to.
And it's a great answer, because it is, and we often use the word or the sentence, it depends. You know, when we were asked and cornered, project controls is quite versatile, quite malleable. There's a lot of moving parts. We're kind of the spine. We're integrated at all levels. It's a really, really interesting job, and it's great to hear from you. I'm going to aim this next one at Michelle, and it's probably a short answer, but you know, one of the things we struggle with in the market is diversity, and it's a big subject. And a lot of the times it's crippled by the fact that time is counted as experience. My example is, you would say, I want a planner with 10 years experience on a job. That's the client, right? Fantastic. And it would be great to diversify, to have not just, you know, the pale, stale male, but also some females, and obviously different heritages and etc. Because I think diversity of thought is important. But to go out into the market, and I don't know what UK is, but Australia is very struggling at the moment with that type of capacity. There are no females. There's probably 2 with that type that meet the criteria. And I think these types of programs are really great for that. You know, if we want to do it, you got to follow the cigarette companies. You know, you got to get them while they're young, and shape them into. Well, I think that was them, or the Catholics. I don't know, but you got to get them young, and you got to bring them in. Dale's knows his head. You got to bring them in early to shape them, mold them for the future. So, Michelle, is there anything that the government's doing to kind of incentivize or encourage that inclusion?
I think, like with a lot of industries, the whole D&I thing is growing. But, you know, in my experience, I've actually had the opposite, you know, in terms of the apprenticeship. When you look at the cohort that Johnny was in, he was in the minority. You know, there was a very even split, which is great. But I think for me, it starts about promoting the choice of apprenticeships from a young age, and those STEM-based things. And one of the chaps that's on the community of practice made a really good point the other day. He said, you know, we're really good at going into schools and, you know, the technical colleges and promoting engineering. Really good at that, and getting the diversity in engineering, because that's where the focus is. But you forget that the project management, the project controls are needed on projects to make them successful. So why don't we offer these same people those routes into project controls and project management careers? Why do we not do the same thing? Why are we not going to schools to promote those kind of careers too? It's all very focused on the engineering side, quite rightly too, because there is a massive skills gap there. There's a skills gap in project management too. They should be given kind of equal footing, and it starts young as well. I think it starts. I've got 2 daughters, and I've been into their school to talk about engineering and project management in National British Science Week that happens in March every year, and that's been in primary school. That's where you need to hit them, in primary school, not waiting until they get to like years 9, 10, and 11.
Not physically,
it's too late by that point, you know what I mean? It really is.
Yes, metaphorically. Oh, yeah, exactly. Johnny, thank you for picking that up. Don't want you going out to schools and hitting people during National British Science Week. That would be dangerous. And somewhat career limiting, I think, Michelle, as well. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the STEM is great, but wouldn't it be great to be STEMP? You know, get the P in there on projects, project management, project controls, project disciplines.
Absolutely.
Because I think you're right. I think that's a fantastic point of view, and I'm glad to see there is a bit of a shift in terms of the apprenticeship diversity. That's great.
Yeah.
I don't know what the national statistics are or anything like that. Do you know what the hit rate is? We should, maybe hit rate's the wrong word, Johnny. We should definitely have a look at that in a follow-up, or if you've got questions, please reach out to the pod and we'll try and find out for you. I've got one more question, then I'll hand over to Dale. You said something earlier on in the pod, Johnny, that I wanted to come back to. You know, the imposter syndrome. Yeah, I write things down. I listen. And you said something about, you give Michelle a call, and she would build you back up.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that? And how did she build you back up?
Well, I think, and it's not just me, I think people can kind of 1 minute, everything's going great and you're absolutely smashing it and you don't need that pick me up and that, but there are other days and that the things aren't going to plan, or you've got a lot building up in terms of your workload and stuff like that, and it's very hard to manage in that. And it goes back to what we're saying is, at a young age, you don't have that skill set. So just having that person there just to kind of go, be honest what's going on. Like it does quote unquote build you back up. And like I said, we never had any like proper serious conversations and that. You just helped me kind of just, work through some thoughts that I was potentially having about work and stuff. It's not, it's the best way to do it really. Because, sometimes when you actually talk about the issue that you're having, when you actually, say it out loud and, or don't like what this person said to me or potentially what they think of me. When you actually say it, it sounds silly. And so just having that person there to kind of just talk through those, those potential issues you might be having is massive. And you'd be so surprised how many people in the industry struggle with it. It's prevalent. It's absolutely prevalent. People are so. Go on, Michelle.
So the imposter syndrome, I think, stems. I think we've all had it in our careers as well. We're thinking, I'm 22, 23. What do I know? You have that kind of those good days where, like Johnny says, you're smashing it and everyone's going to go, oh, that's great and stuff. But when you get challenged, I think that's sometimes where you think, oh, am I doing the right thing? Am I, advising the right thing? Am I getting a bit beyond my level of my capability and stuff like that? And quite often you've got feelings right. And it's just about having that ability to go talk through, or sometimes put the perspective of the other person to the apprentice as well, because sometimes it's not necessarily to do with the apprentice misunderstanding or doing something wrong or what have you. It's that they are unable to put themselves in the shoes of that more senior person or that engineer or whatever it is. And it's just filling in those gaps sometimes to be able to say, that's maybe why they've spoken to you the way that they have, or that's maybe why they've asked you for that, or they don't agree with that, or whatever it is. And I think that sometimes helps build that confidence to say, yeah, my gut feeling is right, but maybe I need to articulate it a bit differently. Maybe I need to tackle it a little bit differently.
Big one I remember was when I was coming back from up in Sellafield and that, so I did a good 3-year stint there, and it was I did that job from my apprenticeship starting, and I was coming back after that time. So I'd gone from working on a major project in a team of about 10 planners to you move onto another project and you're going solo. And I remember I was absolutely crapping myself, proper panicking and that. So I remember speaking to you about it. I think we had a good conversation. I was sat in the car and we talked through it and that, and I was fine. And you know what? It was probably the best thing that could have happened to me, because it, after that, that's when my confidence built, because it was like not necessarily relying on anyone now to kind of, cover potentially any holes that I might have. It's me now. If I don't deliver, something's not going to get done. So it's good.
I don't think imposter syndrome ever really goes away, because I think every now and again you still get it a bit, right? I mean, we're 109 odd episodes in to the Project Chatter podcast, and sometimes we still think, what the hell are we doing with the podcast, so it still happens, throughout your career. So it's something I think you can't overcome. It's more that you just have to get used to the feeling and you get comfortable with that feeling. But just to comment on the schools and universities as well, I mean, anyone related to school or university wants Val, myself, Martin, Michelle, or Johnny to come and talk there, let us know. We'd be more than happy to. We promise we won't hit anyone. Well, maybe Michelle will. But I wanted to talk about barriers to entry into project controls. Johnny, what do you see from your perspective as the barriers for entry for the generation coming in?
It's not publicized enough. It's a massive one. You know, we talked about it before, is that we need to start going into schools and you know, talk about project controls, because, you know, the first thing someone will ask you about project controls is, oh, so it's like project management then? It's like, well, no, it's not actually like project management and that. And it's trying to, you know, help people in the younger generation understand that, you know, this is actually a thing, and it's a viable career path that you can actually take in that. You know, it's
so what do you say that you do? How do you explain it?
Oh, good question. Though sometimes struggle to explain it myself. You know, even when I speak to my family. But I basically have to kind of go on this. It's kind of like project management to help people who don't understand, but it's more on the information side, and you're more in there as an assurance or an advisory role. So that's kind of like the easy way to explain it and that. But to me, it's a bit more than that.
And if you wanted to make it sound sexy, what do you say?
You get to have all the fun telling people they're slipping, but you don't take any responsibility for it.
I love that part as well. I'm like, yeah, we know everything that's going on and we can report on it, but we have no real accountability for it. No, we do actually have accountability. Well, we're responsible, we're not accountable. The PM's accountable.
Yeah.
Michelle, just jumping to you. We spoke around the soft skills and, you know, how to deal with communication and fear of failure and things like that. And we didn't really go into pressure, because a lot of young folk have this pressure on them. And that's something that's invisible. It's something that often we as individuals put on ourselves. How do we help those coming into the industry deal with pressure? Because pressure just goes up volumes, up notches as you progress in the project management arena, because typically when you progress, you get into these larger, more complex, more pressurized projects. And so is that something that we also need to be considering?
Absolutely. I think it can feel, probably pressure them just even starting a job. You know, we've got a new apprentice started with us at Project Controls Solutions, and you know, he said to me, the biggest issue I've had is moving from school into the working world. So that's pressure enough for them, kind of dealing with all of that. But I think in terms of pressure of the job and preparing for them for the future, it's about actively managing their progress, actually managing their apprenticeship. And what I mean by that is, you know, finding placements or rotations that kind of at the beginning, those first couple of years, puts them in a little bit of a cocoon where they're feeling that healthy pressure, because it's never going to go away. Like you said, it's a part of life, but where they've got an ability where they're not pushed to the point where they're solely responsible stuff. They're working with people, and they're working with people who are suitable to having trainees with them as well. They're able to coach and mentor them properly. And also educating the business. You know, Value spoke about it before. Well, I want someone with 10 years experience. Well, tough. You know, you don't say that about electrical engineers or mechanical engineers. That's almost accepted, that path as apprentices, because the team's big enough. We need to do the same with project controls too. Not everyone's like that. Of course, a lot of people are very, very supportive, but putting that environment and just enabling them to have that gradual growth, that kind of pushing them out of their comfort zone, but allowing them, like Johnny says, you know, trying to get them on a project where they're surrounded by people before they go off on their own and dealing with that pressure. But again, unfortunately, they sometimes have to not break to the point of being kind of unwell. I would hate that to happen for any of them, but you've got to feel sometimes what that feels like for you, because it's different for everybody. That pressure point will feel very different for me than it would do for Johnny, for a variety of reasons, which you won't have time to go into today, but there's a lot of them. But they've got to understand what it feels like for them. And it's about kind of pushing that again and putting those again, that little kind of fuzzy mentor blanket around to say that, you know, although you're working for that senior cost engineer or that project manager or whoever it is in that project, you've still got somebody that you can kind of offload to vent to say, I don't know, I'm struggling, I need this. And that's why it works so well, having that kind of home host organisation on projects and with apprentices to allow them to say it's too much or it's not, and having those regular one-to-ones with them, those regular kind of touch points with them to say, how are you doing, and have that honest discussion where you're not involved in their day-to-day project work is the answer for me.
Don't know whether you guys agree with this or not, but I think to me, when I clocked on that the pressure situations are generally when the job's the most exciting, it became fun for me. I don't know how you guys think.
That's what I'm saying. For some people, they thrive in pressure, other people don't, but you've got to kind of get to that point to know how you behave in that situation, don't you? So it's about doing that in a controlled manner, and not making people kind of sink too much.
There's also the ambiguity. Some people aren't comfortable without the structure or the framework, and I think what's good about the apprenticeship is you're enabled with tools and methods to build something out of nothing, which is what tradies do as well, right? It's a very similar approach. Is, you know, there was nothing here before, now there's a big house. And one of the first things I built when I was a planner was a house. Like they said, I think it was a shed actually. Build a shed in P6 or whatever it was. And you know, you probably know this, Michelle. There's a standard kind of sequence of things, and then you have a client change the thing up, and you're like, "What does it go?" And you make a mess. But I think that's something that it might be a predisposition in your character around the fact that you're comfortable with not knowing yet, but you're curious enough to find out. And that's the other element I think is really great about project controls is it's a curious position. You're not biased in a way. You're kind of, okay, what is that telling me? How do I interpret that? And then how do I articulate that back so that they do something about it? You know, you talked, Johnny, about finding the slippages. Well, you know, that's a way to arm and inform the PM, right? And then there should be a really good engaging conversation with the PM. And he goes, yeah, that's right, Johnny. How can you help me? But he doesn't, obviously. But, you know, we should have more of those types of conversations, and it's based on understanding chaos and order.
Yeah, definitely. It's about being given them the freedom to come to their own conclusions, because it's not black and white, unfortunately. If it was, it'd be a very easy job, wouldn't it? And it's not. And there's always something that's, like you said, that slight ambiguity. But allowing that and nurturing that freedom to think, with having the theory in the background, they know what they're doing, but allowing them to come to their own conclusions, because we all have different perspectives on it. We all have different kind of viewpoints on things, but allowing them to do that will just set them up for the future so much to be able to kind of fly with their careers and become those future leaders that we so desperately need to address that skills gap that we're finding ourselves in. There's a huge gap in the middle between sort of these early careers and the dinosaurs that exist.
Dinosaurs exist?
Very, very well put there, Michelle. Johnny, well done, because I knew when you said that Val would bite, because we often, you know, when we worked together, said that the most fun was had after hours, right? Once everyone went home and we were still around going, what the hell happened and how do we figure this out, right? That's when the fun happens. So yeah, fantastic. Hey, look, we wish we had lots and lots of time on this pod, but we don't. We need to make time for some of the features. So this is the surprise for you, Michelle. So Johnny, we can still see you and still hear you, so don't disappear. But for this, we'll hand over to Machine Gun Martin.
Thanks, Dale. We got time for one more feature. So it's called Defend the Indefensible. It's where we ask our guests to defend a ridiculous statement for 30 seconds. It's just a bit of fun based on some of the stuff we've all heard over the course of our careers. So if you're both willing, and I'll do a separate one for each of you.
Not sure I signed up to this.
See, you had the structure in there. Now you're getting the flexibility. So if you're both
feeling
ready,
very pressured now.
Okay, so we'll start with you, Michelle. So if you're ready. Okay, so your statement to defend is: we need people with 10 years experience on projects. Apprentices are worthless.
Absolute rubbish. The ability for young people or early careers people to have different experiences sometimes outweighs the people that are perhaps a little bit stuck in their ways because that's how they were taught to do it back in the day. They can't embrace technology. And plus, because we know apprentices aren't always young, they may have had a second career change. They could bring a whole different aspect to the table.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. And Johnny, on to you. Your statement to defend is?
So just let me be clear before you ask this. Do we need to defend the statement or
Yes.
attack it?
Yes.
Defend.
Defend it. Defend.
Right.
Defend it. Argue for it.
All right, okay.
So your statement is mentors are overrated. Discuss.
Mentors are overrated because at the end of the day, who can you trust but yourself? It's just the key thing in the situation. At the end of the day, you know, no one knows anything better than yourself, so you might as well just go with that situation. And I tell you what, when you actually realise in about 10 years' time, they're all crap anyway.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. Cheers for that. Bit of fun.
I've just realised I've defended. I didn't defend defensible, did I? It's all
That's all right.
the complete opposite.
It's just impossible to defend, though, isn't
It's
it?
impossible. Yeah.
I'll help myself.
So hard. We've got time for one more feature. It's called Fiverr. So it's 5 quickfire questions all about yourself. Nothing too stressful this time, hopefully. So I'll go through 5 questions. We'll go Michelle, then Johnny. So just say your answer. So, okay, question 1. Steak, seafood, or salad?
Or
Michelle.
seafood.
Johnny?
Steak.
What are the 3 must-have behaviours you look for in successful project teams?
Oh, communication, the ability just to get on with things, show initiative, and something else. Oh, the ability to learn by failing.
Cheers.
Well, that would go in second, yeah. It'd be communication, openness, and teamwork.
Nice. What's the one piece of advice for people new to the project profession?
Take every single opportunity you can.
Don't be afraid to ask stupid questions.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, good advice there. If you could go back to one moment of your life, what would it be and why?
Oh my goodness, you put me on the spot here. Professionally speaking, I'm asking for clarification. Oh dear me.
Sure.
I think I don't regret anything that I've done, but perhaps I'd change a different course and take up an opportunity to do perhaps an apprenticeship. I don't know.
Nice. And Johnny?
It's a good question. I'm not sure, actually. You put me on the spot there. I'm a bit blank, if I'm honest with you.
It's all right. We'll skip
I
to
don't really know what happened yesterday, to be honest with you.
Go back to yesterday.
Tuna salad. I'll go with that one.
Nice. Last one. What superpower would you choose to have for a day and why?
Seek out all the gossip and what's going on in projects. I'd get an invisibility cloak.
I suppose it is a superpower when you're remote working, but
Yeah.
Johnny?
I would make unlimited money so I can retire.
Nice.
Amazing insight. Michelle, Johnny, thank you so much for your time. It's been amazing. But before we let you go, I just want to know, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners, Michelle?
Go out and seek, and for those of you that have experienced, go out and offer your services. For those of you who are thinking of embarking, whatever stage in your career in project control, go and do it. There's plenty out there to offer a really fulfilling career.
Fantastic advice. Johnny?
To keep on topic, go into work tomorrow and ask for a mentor.
Wow. Well, folks, if you do go in tomorrow from listening to this episode, and you go and you ask for a mentor, please do let us know. Look Johnny up on LinkedIn and let him know what happened when you did that, because that is an amazing piece of final thought at the end there. Val, can you top that?
No, I can't. I just complimented. I think Michelle, great. And Johnny, absolutely great to meet you as well. Fail fast, fail often, fail forward is a mantra we've always had here at the podcast. But also, as Dale said, info@projectchatterpodcast.com. We'd love to hear more stories of apprentices, and maybe we can get the word out there and help with some of the, project controls isn't good at marketing, and we need to get the message out there. So we'll be working with you. And thanks for your time today, guys.
Pleasure.
Awesome. Fantastic. Folks, so you've heard it. That's all the time we have on this episode. But remember, if you like what you've heard, you can help us by paying it forward and sharing this episode on your favorite social media. Once again, a massive thank you to our guests, Johnny Shepard and Michelle Banner. And thank you all for listening. Till next time, we say stay safe, be disruptive, and have fun doing it. From me, Val, and Martin, it's bye for now.